Hi, my name is Alicia. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Ohio, and I live in a very rural country area, and that's where I grew up. Originally from Colombia, I was adopted when I was about 11 months old. Alright, I knew I was gay from a very, very young age, and by young I mean like 3 or 4 years old. I was very perceptive of my surroundings, and I had a really strong, basically a very strong feeling and intuition that I was different, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I grew up in a very conservative Judeo-Christian family from the Nazarene denomination, and I grew up in that my whole life. Both my great-grandfathers actually, I believe, were pastors, and that stems from, my parents and being raised in the church their entire lives. Um, I, like I said, I was aware that I was gay at a pretty young age, and I wasn't sexually abused, I wasn't neglected or anything like that, and there's a lot of weird perceptions that environment has, like, a really strong emphasis on why or how people are gay. But I built a very, very tight-knit, close relationship with both my parents, who are still married. So I guess I lucked out in that benefit, because a lot of people I know my age have divorced parents, so, again, the environmental factor couldn't be blamed for that. Altogether, I lived in a really healthy family, uh, emotionally stable, everything. It's really one of those American dream kind of things, and being adopted, it was the best possible family I could have been put into. What it really came down to, I had an unequivocal struggle with this for the majority of my life. I'm 19 now, and I came out at 16 to my parents, and I was pretty sure, I was pretty pinpoint on what my sexuality was. My sexual orientation was about 14. The first person I initially came out to in my family, aside from my sister, who was very aware of it at the time, was my oldest brother, and he was giving me 110% support, and there was no, issues or arguments with that. I grew up in a really small school environment. I graduated a class of 93 people, if that tells you anything, and I grew up in a country school. And there weren't any positive reinforcements of what a gay person was, or what it was. And I was raised in such a, conservative understanding of the church, that I already had a perception of what homosexuality was, from a very early age. And I can remember being 6 or 7 years old and opening a book that my parents, a Bible that was given to me for Easter, and coming across the 6 or 7 or so clobbered passages that are usually condemned to use homosexuality. This isn't about my theology standards or what I believe, how my reformed understanding of that now, or my perception of that has dramatically changed, but it's more about how different how my journey basically has been, because of everything I've been through. The biggest struggle has not been my acceptance of people around me outside of my family, because people around me have been extremely accepting and extremely open, and extremely open-minded, and really taken the time to say, okay, you're still Alicia, you're still the little brown child that ran around and acted goofy. And my perception from other people really wasn't, they said that hadn't changed much, but my real struggle came from internally, from my family. My mother is devoutly Christian, and that had a huge, huge impact on my life. Her belief system and the way that she raised us, and I can say firsthand that it was the biggest struggle, telling my parents, because in the end, and still to this day, they don't approve. They don't approve of the behavior. They don't approve of it as a standard of sexual orientation. They don't approve. And it's been a long journey of not, both of our sides, both parties trying to attempt to understand the other side. Because I grew up in the conservative side of that. I grew up in understanding that. I grew up in believing that. And when you come to understand that that's really who you are, and you repress it for so many years, it's the most damaging effect on you emotionally. And it had the most damaging effect on me because I wasn't prepared for what I was going to do. And I just told myself at a really young age, I can't say anything. I can't say anything until I'm 18 or 20 or I'm moved out. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And the perceptions, like I said, I had of gay people were like these really butch, masculine women. How was it me? I displayed a lot of tomboy characteristics growing up, but it was never, super masculine or super butch or anything like that. All these labels that society had pretty much endowed on the LGBT community as far as females go. And I was like, this can't be me. Like, that's not me at all. And, long story short, I initially came to the fact when I came out as bisexual to my parents originally at 16, I did it for the perception that maybe there's a 50% chance that I'm still attracted to men. And there wasn't. And it's almost easier to tell your parents or someone that you love close to you that because they don't have such as a weak outlook on you. And that comes from people that are really conservative and are like, oh, you're gay. There's no way. But like I said, I knew my whole life. So how could I have made something like that up? And I forcibly repressed it for many years, and I knew it. Growing up in middle school, I would have girl crushes. In elementary school, I had girl crushes. I was just extremely drawn to females. I was gravitated towards them the way that a little boy would be. And I couldn't dispute that at all. And my advice to people is if you live in a family, much like a conservative, Judeo-Christian family, it's very hard. If I could go back and change everything, change anything about it, I think I would have waited. But initially, this entire journey that I've had in the last 5 years of my life has completely changed me. I've met some really amazing people. An entire subculture of gays who pursue consistent faith in Christianity, and a lot of people are puzzled by that because they're like, why? There's this whole perpetual culture war of gays versus Christians, and it's not true. There's a lot of people caught in the crossfire of that and the dispute, and it really takes time for people to go back and reanalyze and, reiterate people's experiences and try to understand where we're coming from, because not all of us are promiscuous. And I'm very candid, very, very candid in saying that my lifestyle, as far as not being gay, but my behaviors don't really perpetuate, a conservative gay lifestyle, and they haven't, not until recently when I realized that I needed to make a change in my life. We grew up in a really consistent society that really perpetuates like a sense of loose morals in dealing with sexual behavior. And what the conclusion I came to initially, aside from everything in my theology, my understanding of theology, was that sexual orientation doesn't make you good or bad, but how you choose to sexually express yourself is a term, not a measure of bad or good, but how you are going to be perceived by society. And if you choose to, that's straight or gay, that doesn't matter. It's how you, choose to express yourself sexually that decides whether, it's respectful or not. And I live in a generation that believes in loose sex and a lot of hookups and things like that, and I won't sit here and say that I haven't. I'm very candid in that. I don't try to put myself out there as some person that's really got it all together, because I don't, and a lot of people know that about me, as I have a lot of controversy, and it's simply because I have a lot of different views on things, and I'm very vocal about those things. What it comes down to is, if you're suffering and you live in a family, or you brought up in a family that's much like mine, it pays to be close to people that are, went through the same thing. I met so many people that survived the ex-gay therapy, who went through Exodus with Alan Chambers, which is now closed down because reparative therapy has been denied and it has been, revoked as something that has worked. It doesn't work, no matter how much crazy right wing side theology you have based to it. There's absolutely no science to it, and they've understood this. The more that time has gone by, the more we understand that, and it's come to pass. Sexual orientation cannot be changed. Sexual orientation is fluid, but it cannot be changed. And most scientists agree that it's something that's developed in early childhood development, and environmental factors perpetrating a certain sexual orientation is blind ignorance, really. What I choose to understand from this is I am who I am. I can't change it. I would not put myself through a relationship with a guy and hurt him in the process when I know that I'm not going to be 110% satisfied with that relationship. And it's not, it's not me being selfish, but it's me being selfless in a way by saying, I'm not going to put myself through that, because I have met so many people over the last year of my life that were in broken marriages because they knew that they were gay going into it, and they had children and divorced, and it was just a huge mess, and I don't want to, live my life like that. I don't want it to ever get to that point. So I try to broadly put that message across so people understand that. It's important to find people that relate to you. Even if your family doesn't agree with how you come out, or if they agree with it at all. I know that my family doesn't, and a lot of people have a lot of sympathy for that, because I know many kids that do have supportive parents in terms of their sexuality, and mine are not. What I think is really important to remember is you've had years and years to accept yourself. You have to go through self-acceptance and not repress it anymore and be in denial, and that's what I did for many years. I had to go through a really internal struggle of accepting myself. And you have all that time in your life to process it mentally and emotionally. So when you tell your parents, your grandparents, or your family, or somebody in your family that's important to you that doesn't agree with it or doesn't go over as well as you'd like it to, it's really important, and I find this so important. Even the people that disagree with it or don't understand, it's good to grant people grace and understanding, because you've had all that time to process it. So to expect anyone to get it right away, like at the point that you've come to accept it, is not very realistic. And that's what I try to do to people that even disagree with it, is to grant them grace and educate them when you can with your experience. And that's why I believe that stories are they invoke so much emotion and power, and to have an emotional appeals, and not to make this a political statement anymore, because I feel like that's what this country's done. And they've made it into this complete political statement, and it's not. It's real people, it's real stories, it's real families, it's real emotions, and it's a real struggle that a lot of youth and LGBT teens and youth and adults have to go through. So I hope that my story, will somehow impact one person. That's all I want it to do. And to come to understand that no matter where you are in life, whether you're in your walk of faith or you're just processing everything, that you're never alone, that there's always somebody there for you.